Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Industry Perspectives. I'm your host, Ainsley Bowden, and today my guest is my good friend, Miles Dompier. Now, Miles and I share a love of all things gaming, Xbox, and horror, and so we sat down to talk about all those things, including how he got into gaming, his path to content creation and working with Windows Central, what is it about the Xbox ecosystem that he really enjoys, his horror podcast, and an awful lot more. I hope you enjoy. And we are live with my good friend and horror aficionado, Mr. Miles Dompier. What's happening, brother?
What is going on, man? Stoked to get in the hot seat here with you and talk about, horror games and everything else in between.
Yeah, man. I don't have any hot seat questions. I got to think of some. I'll put you on the spot at some point. But yeah, man, I've been looking forward to this. I know I've told you offline that you're one of my favorite kind of creators in this space, especially relating to Xbox. Love the positivity, love the energy. And, before we even get started, I'll just say that out loud because I know you know that, but just for the audience, really love what you do. And it's been great to see kind of you gain a bigger audience and people really catch on to your work because it's awesome, man.
Yeah, that means a lot. It's still weird to me. Again, I'm newer to the quote unquote industry, if you will. And it's still kind of surreal to me that anyone cares about any of my opinions on video games or anything else. So yeah. I love getting out here and talking about it, and the fact that people want to listen, that's exciting and that's rad.
Yeah, it is a weird feeling once you start to see some of your stuff gain traction, or you see some of the people reading or listening to your stuff, and you're like, almost gives you a weird feeling like, oh, I don't know, I hope I sounded good or wrote that well or what have you. But yeah,
and just some random guy online talking about video games. So
by the way, either your lighting's way better or I'm just that pale, but I should have done something because you're making me look real bad right now. But we're gonna move on.
I'm just gonna say, normally I'm pale. I'm super, super pale. Don't go outside a lot, keeping the skin nice and delicate and fresh. But yeah, so this lighting, it works in my favor. It makes it look like I'm kind of tan when really I'm not. I'm not at all.
Yeah, I'll DM you afterwards for whatever you're using because I obviously need it. So but anyway, man, so we'll kick this off how I usually like to kick these off, which is going back, and I love to hear people's origin story, if you will, of what got you into gaming. Was there a moment? Was there a time? Was there a person? Was there a specific game or console, whatever kind of did that really kind of set that fire ablaze for your passion for just gaming in general? So let's hear it, man.
Yeah, so I have a specific moment that I can point to. And it's a story I've shared before, but I remember being a wee lad and visiting my aunt in Idaho. We lived in Washington State, and we would go visit my aunt and uncle in Idaho once a year. And I don't remember exactly how old I was, maybe 4 or 5, somewhere in that range. But I remember going to my aunt's house, and she had this cool poster on her wall. It was bright and it was vivid, and it just sparked this sense of wonder in me. And so I asked her, "What is that? What is that from?" And she tells me, "Oh, that is a map of Hyrule from The Legend of Zelda." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome. It looks so cool." And then she says, "Do you want to play it?" And I was like, "What?" And so she hooks up her Super Nintendo in the spare bedroom and puts in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. And that was the first time, like, I have this distinct memory of just loving and really connecting with the video game and just experiencing a world and characters and all of these systems and mechanics that at the time I had no idea. I couldn't comprehend any of that. I was like, "Oh, this is fun. This looks cool." But in hindsight, it's really wild that pretty much the first game I ever played stands up as one of the best video games of all time. So yeah, that moment is always the story I share because it is that distinct moment in time where I had a moment that impacted the course of my life forever, I guess.
That's wild, man. So I do forget, you started saying Zelda, and of course, because I'm old, my brain goes to the original, of course, which was revolutionary at the time, right? I mean, it blew us all away. But Link to the Past, I mean, God, as you said, there's not a whole long list of games that you'd be better off introducing video gaming to than that game. That game was another legendary. I'm not even a Zelda fan, and I adore that game. And it holds a really special place in my heart. So that's amazing, man. So you said your grandmother?
My aunt.
Oh, your aunt. I'm sorry. Yeah. So your aunt was really into gaming.
Yeah, so my parents kind of sort of after that moment, like after playing that, I begged my parents, like, please, can we get a Super Nintendo, please? And so that following Christmas, they ended up hooking it up, and I got a Super Nintendo with the Super Mario World bundle. Had that for a while, played that for a while. I got that, and then the Lawnmower Man game were the first two games that I got for my Super
That is
Nintendo.
a big disparity right there in quality.
So I've been meaning to go back because it's been so long since I've played it, but I remember being really confused but compelled to play through Lawnmower Man, and I don't know how it holds up, if it's just a total disaster at this point. But yeah, Super Mario World, another huge game for me. But yeah, I was really grateful and really surprised that Christmas to get my very own Super Nintendo, and that was my very first console.
Wow, that is one of my top 3 consoles of all time,
Yeah,
as
baby,
I think
let's
it is
go.
many people. So, yeah, you started off on the right foot. It was save for Lawnmower Man, but other than
Yeah,
that, you
that's
started off
I
on the
don't
right
think
foot.
that's a classic in most people's eyes.
Super Mario World though is legendary. I mean,
Oh
that's
yeah.
honestly one of my favorite. I think it's the best Mario game. It's one of my favorite platformers of all time. It's
I can replay it over and over. I
yeah,
still probably play it once or twice a year, just because it's so good. When it comes
it
to
is.
2D platforming,
Yeah,
still to this day, not a lot even comes close to it.
no, no, not at all. Amazing. So that's cool, man. So at that point, it sounds like you're really into it. And if you're Super Nintendo in the US, we're Christmas after, you're in about 93 at this point. If I had to guess, 93, 94, somewhere in that range. Did you now stick with it? Like, because I know a lot of people I speak to, and myself included, you kind of die hard into it as a kid growing up. You get into your late teens, early 20s, and where I hear a lot of people drop off, even if it's just for a little bit of time, is late teens, early 20s because of college, girls, cars, all the other stuff that starts to happen for us young men. Um, were you the same, or did you kind of always have that kind of driving force with video games?
Yeah, it was always a part of my life. Like you said, as I got into my teen years, I was really into music. So I played a lot of guitar, was in
Nice.
bands, did a lot of skateboarding. So I mean, I was out and about. But then, once we were all sweaty, done skating, we would come inside and we'd hook up the PS1, play Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Oh yeah.
And so gaming for me, it's never been something that's ever completely gone away. Like you said, college, when I was working a more or less full-time job and going to college, yeah, I had less time for games, but I would still squeeze it in where I could. But yeah, it's something that's never gone away. And I've always played video games pretty much from that moment on until now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So if that's the case, then and knowing, obviously you love all games, and that's all we talk about on the channel here, but you are primarily an Xbox content creator, Xbox kind of community focused person. So did your love of Xbox kind of come at a certain period, or did that really start from the beginning as well with the OG in 2001?
Yeah, so I've kind of had an interesting journey in terms of, my platform preferences, if you will.
Sure.
Loved Super Nintendo, loved PS1, and then I loved the original Xbox. And for me, growing up with my parents and a couple siblings, I have a younger sister and a younger brother.
Okay.
Gaming for me has always been a very social thing. Like
Yeah.
my favorite ways to play games are with other people. And so we'd gather around, play Donkey Kong Country with my mom and my dad, playing Animal Crossing on GameCube with my sister, sharing a town. So it's always been a very social thing for me. So when the Xbox hit, as much as the marketing leaned into the bro, like,
Yeah.
dude, Xbox is red, like it's still leaning into the social component of it. Having the 4 slots, much like the Nintendo 64, so you can get 4 people gathered around the TV to play. So stuff like Halo was huge.
Of
Like
course.
Halo Combat Evolved, a lot of people share similar stories.
Yeah.
That game kind of completely reestablished expectations of a multiplayer game, and we would just every single day we were together playing it over and over and over. And so that kind of social bond with Xbox and the social focus of a lot of Xbox games, that's why I started gravitating towards it. So again, I never stopped loving PlayStation, never stopped loving Nintendo. I tried my very best. Again, I was a kid, so I didn't have a ton of money.
Sure.
But I tried to have every console. And for the most part, in my household, we did. We had the PS2, we had the GameCube, we had the OG Xbox. So when I had the OG Xbox, my sister had the PS2, and my little brother, he had the GameCube. And so we,
Yes.
a nice, well-rounded family in the
Divide
video
and
game
conquer.
sense. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would, go to my brother's room and check out something on GameCube, or go to my sister's room and play Resident Evil Outbreak or whatever it was. But for me, that's kind of when my love for Xbox started. And then from there, 360.
Yeah.
Really, again, heavily leaning into the social elements with Xbox Live. And that was this huge transformative moment in video game history. And I just love those moments of just going online, texting your buddies and saying, yo, let's play Halo. Let's play Two Worlds, the original Two Worlds on 360. Whatever it might be, there was just so many options to play games online, and it was like a whole new way to play games with your friends, and I loved that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, completely agree, man. I very similar with me. Always loved kind of all consoles. I didn't have any siblings my age. I'm actually by far the youngest of the two, and I'm the only really gamer of the family. So I was more like working my low pay jobs and hustling. You know, I'd buy a game and sell it for more, and doing whatever I had to do to get all the games possible. But the Xbox story is funny about that because very similar to you. I had a GameCube. You know, Xbox at the time was a new system from Microsoft, a computer company at the time, and there were a lot of doubts of whether or not that console would do anything. And I was one of the doubters, funny enough, looking back. And so I pre-ordered GameCube and games, and I've told this story many times, but I'm walking out of Electronics Boutique at the time, and the Xbox kiosk is there with Halo, of course. Many people remember, and I played it, couldn't put it down, couldn't get it out of my head, and literally went back that night, the night it came out. The night that Xbox released to buy it, and my GameCube just collected dust. All I did was play Halo. And I know everyone knows me as a Halo guy, so that's it's been that way for 20 years. It is amazing though. On the 360 you mentioned, and I was going to bring that up, is that people always ask, like, what's your favorite console of all time, and 360 is usually my answer because of exactly what you said. It completely transformed gaming as we know it, both online, storefronts, app support, 720p, right? HD gaming.
Yeah, the first console that I had with an HDMI cable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it did so much for the industry. And it was just, I wrote an article a few years back about just how transformative it was, which is the perfect word for it. So amazing, dude. So let me ask you this. I'll put you on the spot for at least one. This should be an easy one, though. Is now we're 20 years removed from OG Xbox and all these other memories that we've created, and different generations now. What is your definitive favorite game of all time? Not what you think is best, but what's your favorite game?
See, that's tough. That's a really, really tough question. I'm not going to cop out.
I know it is a tough question, but you got to pick one.
I'm just going to say, and this changes like based on my gut, but I'll follow my gut here. And the more I think about it and what it did for me and, what it still means to me right now, I would probably say that Legend of Mana is my favorite game of all time.
Oh, you getting on your horse? You getting on your horse for Mana again? Go ahead.
It was just this moment. Again, much like A Link to the Past, is one of those games I distinctly remember playing it for the first time. And not only that, I distinctly remember every moment of that game, all of the characters, all of the environments, all of the boss fights, the music. I don't care what anyone says. That game has the best soundtrack of all time, and I will debate that all damn day. Go listen to Pain the Universe if you haven't, and tell me that soundtrack does not hit on all levels.
He's naming tracks. You better
I'm naming
be prepared.
tracks. I got the soundtrack down. It's one of the few gaming soundtracks that I bought and have a digital library on my computer because I just was so tired of like trying to find low quality versions on YouTube. But yeah, it's a non-linear RPG, and at the time, like I didn't really understand all of these things and the reasons that I love them. I just I liked it. It was fun. It was cool. Very simple kind of level of comprehension. But as I go back to that game over the years, because it's another one that I play every few years, I start to see what that game did and all of the systems it has in place and the way that it presents the world. And you're not this chosen hero. You're just a random participant in this world, and you interact with characters dynamically and organically. And sometimes you go to an area and a character's there, and sometimes they're not. And then you go to a different area of the world, and then you see them and you continue this journey. And it's all of these elements just happen naturally. And I just love that. A lot of people criticize the game because it doesn't have a linear story, like do this and then do this and then do this. And then there's the final boss. Like everything just happens kind of sporadically, randomly. And that's life. That the beauty of this game is that replicates how life works. You don't have a set path that if I do this, this will happen. And so again, in hindsight, I really, really love the beauty of that, of just you being in this world and you just having these experiences based on what you choose to do. And I love it. I just genuinely love that game.
That's awesome. So I love the passion there, and I think one, I do, as much as I joke with you about it, I do hope they come to Xbox one of these days.
I mean, I own it on everything else, so it doesn't really matter that much. But it's again, a game near and dear to me, and I'm in the Xbox community. And I just want people to play it and just to experience it. And I know some stubborn folks who won't go outside the Xbox ecosystem. So for them, I am championing Legend of Mana on Xbox.
Yeah, the way you described it too started with. I don't know if it helps explain, because I know we also share a love of From games, Souls games, Blood, those games. And, as you were kind of describing how, you're just a person in this world and random things can happen and you may miss stuff, some things will happen for me that won't happen for you. And I just started thinking about Elden Ring.
Yeah, when the big Elden Ring conversations were happening earlier in the year and people were talking about how they loved the way the story was presented in this really subtle, cryptic way, and you would just run into NPCs throughout the world based on what you did. I was telling people, like, if you like that, go back and check out Legend of Mana, because it scratches that same itch and it presents the story in a similar way. There's way more narrative in Legend of Mana than a Souls game typically, but again, I think for me that's one of the main reasons I really have gravitated towards From Software and their Souls likes.
Yeah. I agree with you. All right, so this one may be a little harder, but I started asking this because I just find it interesting. So it can be more recent if you want, or it can be one you remember from a long time ago. But what's the biggest gaming disappointment you've ever had?
The biggest gaming disappointment. Oh man,
Something you were
that
hyped
is a
for,
good
hopeful
one.
for, announcement, a game that released that was terrible, you thought was going to be amazing.
Damn, oh yeah, that is a tough one. Okay, hold on.
We can come back to it if you want. We can come back.
All right, let's circle back. I'm gonna think on that one because I'm sure I have something that's floating around in the back of my brain there. But yeah, let's circle back to that one.
Yeah, there's some funny stories on that one. So, and even myself, when I think about it, I'm like, well, there's a few things here, but it's kind of hard to remember. But anyway, all right. So then we come into a couple years ago, and feel free to correct me here. But I think you only got into content creation in some form anyway, just a few years ago. Is that right?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. So I've been in the industry, quote unquote, for a few years now. But previously, when I was going to college and when I was in that era, I was blogging as well. Like writing has always been a passion of mine. So I did have my own outlet to write about video games. And so previously I did that on the side for a little bit. And then I took a several year hiatus from any of that and then came back very recently in the last like 3 years to really go all in. And it's been cool that it's been working out.
Yeah. So take me through that. Like, as you're, because we've talked before that you had a career in a completely different industry. And you wrote previously about gaming, and you said you took a hiatus. And then what kind of drove you to kind of come back and say, hey, I want to get into this space again?
It's, again, gaming has always been a huge part of my life. So I went to college for audio production. So got a degree in audio production, worked in the film industry, worked in the music industry for a brief period of time. Did sound design mostly for film, and then multi-track recording for musical artists. Enjoyed that. Like, it was, I love music. I love film as well. Those were big passions of mine. But I didn't really like the culture of that. And it was, again, a lot of it is the hustle, the freelance thing, the gig culture is not the most rewarding. And I just was tired of not getting paid and tired of getting treated poorly. And I was like, I can't do this. I had a conversation with a audio producer who had done like major motion pictures, like in theaters. And he was still like 30 some years into his career, he was still doing the gig hustle. And I was like, that's not me. I cannot do that. Like, as much as I love it, I cannot do it. So again, pursued other avenues as a way to pay the bills and all that
Right.
good stuff. Worked in sales and marketing for a bit. So I had some high-level executive positions as a spirits supervisor for Southern California for a few different companies. So I managed their spirits portfolios and did brand activations and, acquired new breweries and distilleries and blah, blah, blah. Like I was, it was a big boy job, quote unquote, in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. And I was doing that for a while and I was making decent money. And once I hit the point where I was making decent money and I was still not fully happy with what I was doing, I had some hard questions with myself to say, like, is this what you want to do forever? Because clearly at this point, it's not about the money. Like you've hit this threshold where you're making decent money and you should be comfortable. And I was, but that at the end of the day wasn't enough to satisfy me. So I started looking outside and, dabbling. Originally, it was just going to be like I was going to have my main full-time gig and then I was going to do stuff on the side just to start that transition. So one of the sister sites for Windows Central, iMore, was hiring for a Pokemon writer. I was like, I love Pokemon. I have a lot of writing experience. I'm going to submit my resume for that. So submitted my resume for this Pokemon writing position. And then Jez Corden saw it and saw that I had video and audio production experience. He's like, hey, I know you applied to write about Pokemon, but do you want to dabble with some social content for Windows Central Gaming? And I was like, sure. You know what? I have some audio production experience, some video production experience. Let's do it. So I started doing just the little social videos on Twitter with the gameplay and the text bars and all that stuff. The typical social videos. Was doing that. And then from there, it kind of evolved and my opportunities kind of increased. And so started getting myself on camera, started recording voiceovers, and started being this voice for Windows Central Gaming and the YouTube channel. So I think when I started, we had about 1,800 subscribers or something.
Yeah, like it was new. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing was, it wasn't even that new. Apparently, I'd started it back in like 2016, 2017.
Oh, okay.
Did some videos and then just left it for years and years. Didn't have anybody to do it. And so, yeah, I came in, built that up. We're just about 26K right now.
Awesome.
So had some pretty decent growth there. And it's been a really cool opportunity for me to, get myself out there and talk about games and, do something I love. So it's been a really great experience. And that kind of weird chance Pokemon writing gig is kind of how I guess I got where I am right now.
That's awesome, man. And I've obviously met you through that, gig over at Windows Central, and we've talked offline about, how good that's been for you, and it's been amazing to see the growth over there with what you've produced and the quality of what you produce. I think is a big reason why, and I don't just say that willy nilly. Like, you guys do good stuff and you do good videos, and it goes without saying, obviously, given your background, you do solid production and everything that goes into a good video. So it's great to see, man.
Yeah, no, again, it's been weird, it's been cool, and it's been a very brief period of time, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, considering my lengthy previous careers and experience. So yeah, ultimately it just came down to me wanting to get myself in a position where I could live off working in the games industry, which is a goal for a lot of people. It's a tough thing to do, let me tell you, but there's a way. If you have the means and you have the energy, you can make it happen. So
yeah, it's cool, man. So on that note, you just announced last week, I think, that you're going to start your own channel.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm already subbed, by the way. I'm trying to help you out.
Hey.
So what is that going to be? I know, obviously, gaming, horror. And we'll talk more about the horror aspect in a minute. But what are you looking to do there? And I'll give you obviously a moment here to announce it for anyone watching this that wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, so something very, very recently that I've been contemplating is, having another outlet to talk about games, because I work for Windows Central. So really I'm sort of restricted to talk about Xbox and the PC ecosystem, which I love and I'm passionate about. But anyone who knows me and follows me knows that I also love Nintendo. I also love talking about PlayStation, and I wanted to have an outlet to do that. because again, I could talk about Nintendo on my Xbox show, but everyone rolls their eyes and just says Nintendo's bad or whatever. So I wanted to have another outlet for that. So yeah, it's simple. It's just youtube.com/Miles Dompier. And I don't have any videos up yet, but yeah, it's going to be a place where I can talk about video games outside of the Xbox ecosystem, horror movies, horror media, and music as well. So it's not going to be like a hardcore thing that I necessarily go all in on, but it is going to be a really awesome opportunity for me to stretch my wings and talk about stuff that is not tied specifically to Xbox.
Yeah, no doubt. That's cool, man. It's cool. So along those same lines too, we'll jump over to kind of horror for a little bit. You also, I don't know if it was earlier this year or late last year, because I think you have 9 episodes now, but you do a horror podcast called Fear on Tap, which not just gaming, right? It's movies, games, what have you, IPs even, because I know big lover of Evil Dead like myself. So how's that going? How are you enjoying that?
Yeah, so yeah, Fear on Tap is my horror podcast. And again, if you follow me, you know I love talking about horror. And I also understand that not everyone is into horror. It is a relatively niche thing in the grand scheme of things, but very passionate community. A lot of people love horror.
Yeah.
Horror for me, huge part of my life. Growing up, we would do family movie nights, and instead of watching your typical PG movies, we would watch horror movies. So we'd all get together and watch ridiculous B horror movies. And so just growing up, it was just a part of my life. And so it's always maintained a part of my life. So I wanted specifically an outlet to talk about horror movies, because I could talk about horror games, and I do quite frequently. But Fear on Tap, again, it doesn't just talk about games. It talks about movies, other mediums, co-hosted by Ains Chiasson. She's from Quebec, so she's legit French. I'm the phony Frenchman of the duo, but she's amazing. She's my co-host over there. We've been debating doing like a video version of it, because right now it's just been audio. So another reason to have my side channel is so we could have a video alternative for Fear on Tap, so we could do the show live, do it on video. And so I think long term that is our strategy there. But yeah, if you're into horror, we talk about a lot of obscure stuff. We go down some rabbit holes on not true crime, but true crime adjacent. And then we have this segment called Hometown Horror, where we share people's local scary stories, urban legends, stuff like that. So it's a good diverse pool of stuff if you are into horror. And then we also do a featured beer every week. So if you're into beer as well, we talk a little bit about some brewskis.
That's awesome, man. I'm not sure I've ever heard of a family with their kids having a horror night. And now, being a parent whose kids are mostly grown up at this point, I regret that I didn't think of that. What I did do, though, is I introduced them to a lot of the classics, like 80s movies, 70s, 80s, early 90s, maybe movies, the ones from back then, comedies, all kinds of things, Planes, Trains, Automobiles, Weird Science, all those classics. So they do have a feel for that, at least, but we've failed on the horror front, sadly.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like my parents are either really good parents or really bad parents, depending on who you talk to. So.
Good in my book, for sure. What was I going to say? So that's cool, man. I'm glad that that you're thinking about branching that out onto the YouTube channel. So you heard it here first. There you go. World premiere. Yeah, I'll fill that in right there. World premiere before you say it.
And then I thought of my biggest disappointment, if we want to circle back to that.
Let's go.
Biggest disappointment. Resident Evil 0.
Really? Wow.
Resident Evil 0. Love Resident Evil. Again, I remember another kind of defining moment of my childhood is being at Toys R Us and being in the video game aisle. And
I miss it, man. I miss it.
It was such a special, like just looking at the wall and looking at everything and picking up the case and looking at the back and just picking a video game based on the cover art and what was on the back of it. And nothing more. No reviews, no Metacritic, nothing like that.
No arguments on social media. Just, this game looks cool.
Yeah, game looks.
And then you play the roulette and you see if it was actually good or not. And you join that conversation with your friends. It was the best time, man.
So I was at Toys R Us and I had the surfing Pikachu. I don't know if you remember that. It was like this pedometer like Tamagotchi Pikachu device like around that. It's back when there was the Digimon and the Tamagotchis. It was something like that, but it was Pikachu focused, and you could make Pikachu surf. And so I had that in my hand, and then I had a copy of Resident Evil Director's Cut, the original for PS1, and I was kind of waffling back and forth, but ultimately I went with Resident Evil 1, the Director's Cut. And I remember booting that game up for the first time and just being blown away because I'd never played anything like it. It was one of those games that I could only play for like 15, 20 minutes at a time because it was too scary, too intense. I had like burning through all the ink ribbons because I was saving over and over. I'd do one thing and run back and save. And like, so Resident Evil from that moment on was huge. Resident Evil 1 I loved. And then Resident Evil 2 came out and I was like, oh my God.
2's legendary.
That game just changed everything for me. I love that game so much. Resident Evil 3 came out. It was fine. Some people love it. Some I don't. I think it's okay. I didn't hate it by any means. And then Code Veronica, I didn't play until later on because, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it a Dreamcast exclusive?
Dreamcast exclusive at first, yes.
Okay, so I didn't play it until later. So I didn't play that at launch, but I did play Resident Evil 0 at launch. And I remember being so excited. I was like, oh, this is the prequel to the events of the original Resident Evil.
I still have it. I have it sitting on the shelf right over there.
Yeah, I still have my physical copy for GameCube. And I was like,
so I don't remember it. Why is it so bad?
The duo system. Because it's Rebecca and then I'm blanking on the. I want to say Billy, but that's probably wrong. So if I'm wrong, sorry.
He looks like a Billy.
He looks like a Billy to me. But you had like the greaser dude, and you had Rebecca, and they were on a train, and it had this obnoxious system where you had to like swap between the two. So you'd walk up to a door with one of the characters, and then you would have to swap to somebody else, and then go around and do all these things to open the door for that character. And then you would take control of the other character again, and then go up on the roof so you could lift up Rebecca or whatever it was. It was so tedious. Like everything that I loved about Resident Evil was just completely, I don't want to say ruined, but it was one of those moments where I was like, ugh, is this the direction they're going? Because I don't like this direction at all. And so that was the first time I played a Resident Evil game at launch that I was really, really disappointed with. And from there, we had some other disappointing Resident Evil entries, but that in particular, that was one moment where I was just like, ugh, big miss. And then I played Code Veronica later on, and that was also, in my eyes, a big miss. But
I was going to say, I know that's a running joke with you as Code Veronica. And I remember it fondly now, to be completely fair. I was a Sega kid growing up. Not that I didn't love other things, but I was Sega diehard. Dreamcast was my jam. When they got an exclusive Resident Evil, that was big news, right? I mean, it was huge at the time. And so when I was playing Resident Evil as an exclusive on my Dreamcast at the time, I adored Code Veronica. But I haven't played it since. So I don't know, in reality, what it actually holds up like. So some people seem to love it. Could be nostalgia talking like myself. Others say it's not that great, but you just
I've tried so many times to go back to it. Tried it on PS2, bought it when it was ported over to Xbox 360, the HD version, and then I tried again maybe 6 months ago to play it. And I'm just like, I don't get it. I really don't. It's the moment in time when Resident Evil just went full anime. Like just the story, it's always been cheesy. It's always been campy. But that was the first moment where they're like, you know what? Anything goes. It doesn't matter. Anything you want to put in here, we're going to put in there. And I was just like, I don't know, man. Like I want these games to be scary a little bit. And I just couldn't take any of it seriously.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't know if you heard Ho give the most ridiculous take probably ever on Resident Evil on Big Cast 2 weeks ago.
He said Resident Evil 6 was better than what?
Village.
Oh, that's right. That's
and I don't know if he swears he's dead serious. It felt more like it was for shock value. And Travis and I just kind of had this. We didn't even know what to say. I think we were pretty much speechless at that point.
I'm one of the people who's kind of sympathetic to Resident Evil 6. I didn't think it was a total disaster. If you look at just the Leon campaign and the Chris campaign, it's fun. It's a dumb, fun co-op shooter. The Jake campaign and the Ada campaign, it starts, you're pushing the boundaries of what's acceptable. So it's not a fantastic game, but I've played it through several times. And even maybe like 2 years ago, I replayed through it again on Xbox One. I still enjoyed it. But still, I'm not I would never come out and say Resident Evil 6 is better than Village.
Village is a great game. I love Village.
It's just not. Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil Village, like that was the shot in the arm that franchise has needed.
Yeah.
And that's how we got the killer Resident Evil 2 reboot. And I'm stoked for Resident Evil 4 reboot. But
dude, me too.
Yeah, Resident Evil 6 better than Village. That's more than a stretch.
I'll save that clip for him. You know, one of my gaming gaps is I've never finished. This is sad to admit right now, but I've never finished Resident Evil 4. Never finished it. So I know for some people that's like one of their favorite games of all time. So I'm so pumped for this remake, man. I can't wait for that to release.
This is going to be controversial, and I love Resident Evil 4. I have bought Resident Evil 4 on GameCube, on PS2, on Wii, on Xbox 360, on Xbox One, and on the Switch. So I love Resident Evil 4, but I replayed through it very, very recently in anticipation of the remake.
Yeah.
And it's too long. It's like you can play through it in probably 15 to 17 hours. So for a Resident Evil game, it's quite long.
That's pretty long. Yeah.
And there are segments now that I know people were mad that segments were cut out of Resident Evil 3, but I there are segments in 4 of them I assume they're cutting because they do not hold up well. And I'm also wondering if characters are going to be cut. Like, is it who's the short little guy? It's not. Is it Salazar?
Oh, I don't know.
Mr. Kennedy. It's just like this little tiny guy with this terrible accent, and I can't imagine a world where they keep him in the remake. But who knows? Maybe they'll find a way to do it. But
this is why they said it's a reimagining, because they're giving themselves leeway.
They're good. Yeah, there are definitely scenes that need to go.
Too funny, man. So we'll talk offline. I'm playing a hard game currently for a review that you may be interested in. I don't know. You might be playing it too, for all I know. We'll talk offline afterwards because I can't say anything about it, but it's pretty good so far. So let's circle back to Xbox, because I love talking to people that cover kind of generally cover a specific brand. And I've had obviously PlayStation and Nintendo conversations as well. But I've also talked to Jez before. I've talked to others in the Xbox community. And, you know, Xbox, we all know we're not going to rehash the Xbox One launch and early generation. You know, we've all talked about that more than anyone needs to talk about anything. But, you know, over the past few years, we've kind of all agreed that Xbox is hitting this stride. There's this renaissance, and they are kind of expanding the gaming industry in ways where it really needs to go. You know, connectivity, accessibility, broadening things to bigger communities globally, you know, cloud gaming, having cross-save, cross-play, all that stuff that we all know is going on. So what are your thoughts on kind of where Xbox has driven over the past few years and is driving now? I mean, we're a week removed from the Xbox Showcase of 2022. And we know a good chunk of what's coming, at least for the next 12 to 18 months, and even beyond in some cases. Are you kind of a fan of all their approaches here, or are you kind of still waiting to see if they can deliver on some of their promises?
Yeah, so earlier you touched on the original Xbox and the skepticism surrounding the brand, because you had Microsoft, this huge tech company, getting into the gaming space. Again, in hindsight, it's kind of funny, but a lot of people back then consider them getting into the space late, and they've been in the space for 20 some years now. But a lot of people had negative expectations from Xbox, and I think what really established that brand and established the console and platform is the fact that they've always been innovative. The original Xbox, Xbox Live, Xbox 360, they've been meaningfully pushing the industry forward with online connectivity, with social features, with achievements. There's always been these points where they can point to something, and you can say that drove the industry forward in some ways. The Kinect, you know, not everyone loved the Kinect, but still the initial idea of that Kinect, as much as it was trying to answer the Wii in some regards and trying to get a piece of that pie, the fundamental tech itself was still really impressive.
Yeah.
And then
I'm a Kinect apologist. I like
again, really amazing tech. It didn't get implemented in the best ways, didn't have the best games, but the fundamental underlying tech, I don't care who you are, it's undeniably impressive what they were trying to do with that. And that vision, that innovation seemed to get lost towards the tail end of the 360 into the Xbox One, as they started to realize, like, damn, we're making a lot of money with this platform. And they started shifting their priorities to entertainment, to mixed media. They started shifting their priorities to increase revenue. You're a business, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But that innovation, that fundamental drive to innovate and push the industry forward wasn't there with the Xbox One. There was an upgraded Kinect. Sure, you could talk to your TV. You could do voice commands. There was the pin feature, or what was that called?
A snap.
Yeah,
the snap man, feature. I want it back.
Yeah, there were a couple cool features out of the gate, but the overall drive, it didn't feel like it was there. And again, we're not going to rehash the Xbox One launch, because objectively, it was not a great launch. Really hurt the brand. So then there was this fumbling period where they were unsure if they should commit to this. Should they pull out of the industry? How do they want to move forward with the Xbox brand? And then in 2017-ish, there was this moment in time where they changed leadership, changed priorities, and they said, we are going to go all in on gaming. We are going to shift the business. Xbox is a key pillar of Microsoft now. And there was that moment. And again, at the time, people were skeptical. They're like, is this just talk? The last several years from you have not been impressive. I don't have a lot of reasons to be excited about your future. So there were a lot of skeptics and skepticism of Xbox that was warranted. I know a lot of people talk about, unfair criticism of the Xbox platform, and you can point to specific people. Sure, maybe they do. But generally speaking, there was a period of time where Xbox was not in the good graces of most of the gaming industry and community.
Agreed.
And now we are at a point in time where, like you said, they have built a lot of momentum. Xbox Game Pass, innovative, industry-changing service. Xbox Cloud Gaming, the Xbox Series X and S, the mission statement there when those dropped, and they were talking about Xbox Velocity architecture and incorporating super resolution and making sure that their hardware, no matter who was developing for this console, was going to be cutting edge. Like those things are really important. And now we're seeing Xbox spend all this money on acquisitions, bolstering Xbox game studios. And there are maybe some fair questions in some regards as to, the fruit of those acquisitions. Mm-hmm. I would say we still have some time to see those fruits come to light, but a lot of people are growing impatient of quote unquote waiting for what's next. Sure. But generally speaking, I am more excited about the future of Xbox than I've ever been, despite some legitimate questions here and there about decisions and the platform. The overall energy and passion of that team at Xbox seems genuine and seems authentic, and that is really important to me, because we're seeing a lot of nefarious interests come. Saudi Arabia, for example, is just investing and buying as much as they possibly can, and I don't imagine that Saudi Arabia really cares about the quality of games. I imagine they're trying to get a return on said investment, and there are people in the space doing that, the buying up to get the easy money. Mm-hmm. And it's important that we have people come in and use that. Microsoft, one of the biggest piles of money on the planet. Like they could be a big evil entity if they wanted to. So it's important to me that they're coming in, they're saying, we are trying to make better games. We are trying to use our resources, leverage all of this power to make better games. And that to me is really important. And when I see Phil Spencer talk, when I see Sarah Bond talk, when I see these figures from Xbox talk, there isn't this false sense of investment in gaming. They truly and genuinely seem to care about what is good and what is going to move the industry forward, as well as obviously trying to make money for their business. So
of course,
I am really excited about the future of Xbox for a lot of reasons. And again, they are back to that point where I feel like they really are innovating again, and that's really exciting.
Yeah. Very well said, man. Very well said. As you were talking, as someone's kind of making a point, you usually have thoughts running through your head of, what you can add to it or what questions you want to add. And as you were speaking and the thoughts were coming to my head of points I wanted to add, you then were covering them. So, very well said. Because I was going to say that, this is going to be a huge generalization, I realize. But you kind of have two models that you touched on there, which is you can buy assets knowing that they have a high ROI and you're going to invest in them. And over the coming years, decades, you're going to make millions or billions of dollars. You can do that. A lot of companies do it. It's capitalism 101.
Yes.
And let's not be naive and think that Microsoft and the freedom that Phil Spencer has and his promotion to the what they call the inner circle of Microsoft, where he's an executive VP and part of the, the heads on the board, not the board, but the six, I think it's 16 people or 18 people that are report directly to Nadella. And the freedom that, the investment that Nadella has kind of offered towards gaming and going all in is kind of wild to see. Because what we're witnessing in real time is the richest company in the world and the CEO, the richest company in history, I may add, the CEO of said company saying that they're going all in on gaming. And he makes direct statements about gaming and Xbox Game Pass and Halo. And, we were just talking a little bit ago about 21 years ago, this unknown IP on an unknown console coming out and blowing us all away to the point where that's all we played day in and day out. Where you had, at most a couple million people in the world aware of that game and playing it, right? Fast forward 21 years and you've got the CEO of the richest company in history actually talking about it by name. And it both shows you, one, to your point, how serious Microsoft is on gaming, but it also shows you how big the gaming industry has gotten. And as this gaming industry grows globally and it becomes, I think it's I just did research on this, but about $170 billion industry, I believe, in 2022. And I think by 2024, they're expected to be over 200 billion. Obviously, you have all the big companies coming in and saying, I want a piece of that pie.
Yes.
So I completely agree with you. I kind of went on a tangent there, but what I was saying is that obviously Microsoft intends to make money. No, let's not be foolish and think that they're not investing in the long-term strategy here of making billions on ROI. But the way they're going about it, to your point, and the people they have in charge and the people that interact with the community on a daily basis, which quite frankly, we don't see from PlayStation, we don't see from Nintendo when you talk about the big three in the industry, is not only a unique way, but to your point, I agree that it's genuine, right? It's not a disingenuous approach where they're on social media trying to be like, hey, gamers, like
The Rock is a recent example. Enjoy your gaming.
Oof. Yeah.
That did not feel genuine. I'm sorry. I love The Rock, charismatic dude. Normally comes across very likable. That did not feel genuine to me personally.
That was really bad. Like all that was a 2-minute segment on how not to do a promotion, right? Like, yeah, it was bad. But anyway, I complete agreement with what you said, and I agree with you. They're innovating again. It's very impressive, and I think they have the benefit, of course, of having the Microsoft technology behind them and everything that goes into Azure and everything, all the stuff we could talk about. And they're using that for gaming, which is just it's incredible, man. So you kind of touched on it briefly around, some people still have some criticisms. And I wanted to ask you about that because one of the conversations now that we're post kind of this E3 period again, we got the showcase and we know about game delivery from Xbox first party over the next 12 months. And now that it's been 4 years since the 2018 E3, where they announced those first 5 acquisitions and the whole acquisition domino effect began, right? But there are questions when you look at, and as I said, when it comes to Halo, it's hard to find a bigger fan than me. But there are questions about 343's delivery with Halo and where things like why Hellblade 2 is taking so long and where's Compulsion Games project, right? And where these other studios in Exile's got like 3 projects in the works from what I understand. And, where are these things? And are they so hands-off in their approach? Because the big thing they've said is about freedom, right? For their development staff and being able to passion projects and, create the vision you want to create. Does it feel to you in any way like, again, anecdotally, as if they may be a little too hands-off? Like they're not curating their delivery of games and development closely enough.
That is definitely a sentiment I've seen shared online. A lot of people are asking where the games are because, it has been a decent amount of time since some of these teams have shipped a project. And so I think a lot of people from different disciplines look at project schedules and deadlines and try to draw parallels to that in the games industry. Me right now, when I look at Xbox, I can't really say for sure if they're too hands off. And I think it's really going to come down to what these games eventually ship like. If we end up waiting all of this time and these games come out and they're just not that good, if there are fundamental flaws with them, if there are huge issues with them, and all of that creative freedom that they were allowed didn't manifest itself into a great game, I think those conversations are going to be very, very loud. Right now, we've seen Halo Infinite ship. Mm-hmm. And as much as Halo Infinite shipped in a great state initially, it's a game that in hindsight, I'm wondering why it wasn't delayed, because clearly the teams...
Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me.
It's it's again, like, love the game, love the package at launch, but when you're launching a free-to-play games as a service and you are one of the biggest companies in the world, like you said, one of the biggest companies who has Sea of Thieves, who has Gears, who has all of these other games that have had a service component, if you launch a game and then you say, oh, we're not ready to do the service component, it's what's going on there? And so those more than the games like not being out, like Everwild, if they want to take a bunch of time to iterate and figure out the formula that works well, cool. I don't really care, because what's exciting about Microsoft is they have the resources to fund that, and it's not going to destroy them where it would destroy some other team. So we should take advantage of that. We should champion that. If it's going to take more time to get something great, so be it. But when you ship Halo Infinite, for example, your flagship IP, and there's a lot of questions and a lot of negativity and blah, 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 that in particular sets this precedent that you had 6 years, 7 years, whatever you want to say, however long you had to do that. And then it launched and it still wasn't quite ready. I think objectively we can say that. Again, Halo Infinite, I still think is a great game. I reviewed the multiplayer at launch. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Loved it. Loved the core experience of Halo a lot. The campaign as well. Really, really enjoyed the campaign of it.
Yeah.
But again, 343 Industries, a lot of scrutiny. They're under the microscope in a lot of ways, and I think 343 is the most prominent example that we have for skeptics and critics to say what's going on behind the scenes. More so than Rare with Everwild, more so than Obsidian with Avowed. I think 343 right now is the biggest question mark. And that's kind of one of their legacy studios that's been around since this resurgence of Xbox game studios. So again, it's hard for me to say that they're not managed closely enough. But when we see games like Halo Infinite ship the way that they did, I understand why people would say that.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's fair. I was having a long conversation about this, so I said, "Don't do this to me," because I agree with you. Like, I've reviewed Halo Infinite, obviously a ton of history with Halo, and very critical. One thing I always say, and not to make an excuse, but the weight of expectation on a Halo launch is almost second to none. There's very few games that garner that much attention. And then when you combine that with the scope of the game, that it has to deliver this epic, gigantic campaign, and Chief has to be featured, and you have to have X, Y, and Z. And we saw in Halo 5
the Halo checklist.
Yeah, there's the checklist. And then you have to also deliver untouchable multiplayer that competes with the best multiplayer games on the market and is feature rich and pays homage to all this history while innovating still. And then, oh, by the way, there has to be a pro league as well. And you have to support pro players and global tournaments. And and you've got to do all that perfectly. And oh, by the way, we want co-op and we want Forge and we want it now. And, it's just wild, the scope of a full-fledged Halo game. Now, all that said, I am in complete agreement that, it's very obvious that they weren't prepared fully, at least, for live service delivery. And I think they're certainly not alone. I was having this conversation the other day, which is, look at every live service game that's launched in the past decade and name one that in the first 6 to 9, maybe even 12 months in a lot of cases nailed it. There's very few.
Exactly. Yes. Everyone is, again, we're in this period where everyone's trying to figure out how games as a service works. And will we ever get one that launches out the gate strongly? I don't know, but I feel like if it takes a little more time to do it, let's go. We have plenty of examples of things that people like and have worked. So at this point, when it comes to new games, it's getting to the point where
you should have known better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You floundered with Gears 5. You floundered with Sea of Thieves. People grilled you, just absolutely grilled you for years over those games. And then you do it again, and I'm like, okay, come on now.
Yep.
Come on, guys.
I actually used Sea of Thieves as an example the other night. I was like, if you go back and look, what they called the anniversary edition, which was kind of like their relaunch, that was 13 months post-launch.
Yeah.
And then, some of the kind of real content, the big content didn't come until after that. So I think, even as a Halo fan, I'm kind of giving them till the end of this year. We'll see when they get to season 3. This Tatanka mode, co-op, Forge, we'll get there and we'll reevaluate. But if we go into next year and they're still floundering and dates are getting pushed, there's got to be a serious conversation.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like it's not the end of the world to me. The overall package is still solid. You can still play Halo and have fun. Again, I have plenty of other stuff to play, so I'm not out in the streets screaming about Halo Infinite. But again, I just that was one specific instance where I'm like, this is not what I wanted from the new face of Xbox Game Studios and the new era. Because for me, I was hoping that Halo Infinite would be the kickoff of what this means for all of these teams under the Xbox Game Studios banner and what we can expect from their launches. And I think, again, for the people who were already skeptical of the Xbox platform, this was just ammo for them to just run wild with.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So let me ask you this then, on staying on Xbox for a second. Is there something that you believe they could do better? Like, is there something when you look at Xbox, and we've talked about all the positives and their direction, and I think you and I generally are positive on things. I mean, that's how we roll. But, when you look at them and you say, okay, Xbox going into 2023, I can't believe it's almost July, 2022. But, as we look into the near future here, what could Xbox do better in your opinion? Is there something that you talk about or think about frequently in that vein?
Yes. And this is, again, maybe not the biggest deal for a lot of people, but I think they're really struggling right now when it comes to video. The game DVR, that's been a big point of contention. Like, that's been busted arguably for years. Years and years and years we've been putting up with a mediocre game DVR, even compared to my Switch. The Switch is so wildly underpowered compared to my Series X. The DVR is way more consistent, like 99% more consistent.
How ridiculous is that? Like the Switch, when we talk about the online, right? It does very few things well. Like the online of Nintendo is a joke.
They're still they're behind the curve pretty aggressively. Yeah,
by generations in some aspects. So the sheer fact that their DVR is still better than Xbox in today's age is mind-boggling.
Sure, yeah, you can't record video on every Switch game, blah, blah, blah. But still, I can record a video. I can go into my gallery. I can upload that video in a couple of seconds. Xbox, oh man. Like it's a 50-50 shot if I can even trim the clip, and then it'll like 50% of the time it doesn't even upload to OneDrive or mobile or anything like that. I have to do a reset on my console to get stuff to upload. Sometimes audio's not there. It's again, people have talked about this ad nauseum at this point, but that is really weak. And then once Mixer left, their streaming integration on the console is also.
I was going to add that.
Really mediocre. Like you have so limited options. You can choose like 2 different bit rates for 1080 and that's it. You can connect a webcam. A lot of the other fundamental features are just really bare bones, really limited. And again, this isn't the biggest deal for everyone, but when you look at PlayStation, when you look at Nintendo, they are leaning into that, and they're leaning into the social aspect of it. And again, you and I both shared like one of the reasons we love Xbox is that community, that social aspect of it. And those key components to me are just gone. Like there are ways to be social, but it doesn't feel like what it once was with 360 when it comes to what you could do, how you could share the experiences. And I'm really hoping they refocus that. I know right now the focus is getting games out, building up Xbox Game Pass, Xbox Cloud streaming, all of those things. But I really want that social component to come back to the Xbox platform.
Yeah. No, you nailed it again, man. I'm telling you, you're pulling thoughts out of my head because I was going to add about streaming because I do like to stream. I stream for Extra Life, but I prefer to play on my consoles rather than my PC. And I used to love Mixer, man. Mixer was integrated so well. It was near real time. Like it was so near real time that you could play. We used to play Jackbox games, you know?
Yes, yes,
Yeah, they're
100%.
great to play with friends, but it has to be near real time because there's timers on a lot of the games, or there used to be. The new ones actually have a new option where you can do unlimited time, which is cool. But you could do that on Mixer, and then it was just a quick button clip, and you had different. You could check your camera. There was just so much better integration, and that was 5 years ago. And then Mixer dies, and that's a whole nother story on its own, right? But they then revert to Twitch in this ancient integration, which was horrible. They recently updated and improved it a bit. It's still not great.
It's so I tested it out actually for the first time, like the newest version last week, to do some just Evil Dead just to see what it was like, and it was so limited, so uninteresting. You don't even see chat on your own screen anymore. You have to pull up like a second display to have chat now, and it's disappointing. It's really
weird. It's weird, and you can't stream to YouTube.
Can't stream to YouTube. You can only stream to Twitch. That's it.
Twitch, and it's just wild, man. Because to your point, they are kind of the social construct. Obviously, they have unlimited technical resources and financial resources, for that matter. And it's just wild to think that they don't have more focused on the social space. To your point, and I think even tying into that, the only other thing I would add is, and we hear this all the time in the community too, is just achievements. Achievements are incredibly outdated. The system, like, they haven't made any kind of change to achievements in years and years.
What was the last big one? Rare achievements? Was that the biggest?
Diamond? Yeah, that was it. Or achievement tracking, maybe, where you can track it.
Yeah, achievement tracking. So I've done a few little things here and there,
but I mean, I don't even care. I'm not even an achievement guy, but it would be nice to see that support, because there are a lot of people in the community who are, and they really go crazy for trophies and achievements. And it's just, I don't know. They seems, again, I'm not a developer, at least in the gaming space, and I'm sure there's way more to it than we think. But it just seems like low-hanging fruit almost. Like, it's just there, and you hear the community talking about it. It's crazy.
Yeah, and again, like, I talk to a lot of developers in my current role, and so that's always something I'm careful on, is not to oversimplify certain things, because the more I talk to people, the more I understand that even the dumbest, smallest little thing is like a 50-person nightmare that takes weeks and weeks. So I try to be sympathetic, but also I think about like what I want from the user experience, and I don't think it's unfair to say that Xbox has not been innovating in the same ways that they used to on that side of things.
Yeah, agreed. So circling around, man. So as you look to the future here, you've got your new YouTube channel. You're going to be talking about things outside of Xbox and other things coming up. Is that kind of what's next for you? Is to kind of keep plugging away in the community, keep kind of growing that audience, kind of starting to talk about broadening your voice across different things? What's next?
Yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed my time at Windows Central. It's been awesome. It's been a great opportunity. Love the Xbox community. And again, I think for me, as I'm looking forward, I love talking about games. I love being a part of that experience. I would love to get myself in a position where I'm more directly involved with bringing games to an audience. If I'm thinking about big picture stuff and where I can see myself 10 years from now, whatever the case might be,
sure.
I would love to be a fundamental part of bringing those experiences to players. I'm not under any illusions I'm not going to go back to school and learn how to code a game. Like, that's gone. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be that person. There are people who are way more skilled in that regard already, but I would love to move over to a position that gets me, behind the scenes and working with teams to bring games to people.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I obviously wish you the best of luck, and I have no doubt from the interactions I've had with you, I have no doubt that you'll get there. So yeah, that'd be good. One last thing I want to ask you, and it's not really a closing topic, but as we were talking about bringing games and broadening the audience, I have this conversation a lot. I know you and I have talked offline a little bit about this, and I usually ask this question of my guests just because I don't know. I like to hear what other people think, but I'm a pretty vocal person in the community around types of content and positivity and, respecting developers and, just getting away from the whole shock jock angle of that we see in the community so
you
much.
You
won't believe the YouTube thumbnails and, everyone just yelling and screaming and making a big deal out of everything, right? It's just incredibly immature and disingenuous to me. And we're not children. I mean, many of us are in our 30s and 40s. Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, you have a family. Like, come on. But as you talk about creating content, getting into the industry, being part of the teams that bring games to people, and how you broaden that message, like I said at the top of this, is one of the things I really do like about you is you're one of the content creators that's generally, again, speaking in a platform community, Xbox, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But as we very well know, there are people on Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, PC, whatever community you want to pick, who do exactly what we're talking about. So what is your, as you think about that and thinking about broadening your message and getting in the gaming industry, what's kind of your view on the social space around gaming as it stands right now? Because if you take the social space and you think about gaming as an industry and you think about how the world looks at video games, that's evolved a lot, right, over the past few decades. I mean, gaming now is a thing that more people do than nearly anything else globally. And video games, when I was a kid, again, I'm older, I know, when I was a kid, was this geeky little niche thing over here, right in the corner, that kids did, and they were toys. They were looked at as toys. Very different market nowadays, obviously. So, but there's still this kind of outside, kind of, I don't know the word I'm looking for here, kind of angular view on the gaming industry as being immature, right? And filled with kind of going back to the whole bro angle and, misogyny and, a lot of genuine issues within the gaming community. So, how do you look at that, and how do you kind of navigate those waters as you look to create content and be a part of the industry yourself? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, by the way.
No, I mean, I know it's something that I talk about a lot. Like, I talk about on social media, I talk about on my podcasts, because it's really important to me. Again, I'm an Xbox centric creator in a lot of ways. I focus on the Xbox platform, but one thing I don't humor ever is the console war conversations, building opinion or building a criticism based on your just undying loyalty to one platform. And I've said this before and I'll say it again, but anyone who completely writes off any platform right now, I don't think you really are looking at the big picture of the game industry. Because again, Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation, PC, there's criticisms that we can point to for all of those platforms, for sure, 100%. And I'm also not in the camp of people that, because there's the whole toxic positivity thing that people push. And it's right now we're just in this world where everyone wants a really easy answer. They want to say, this person's a journalist, so I can't trust their opinion.
Yeah.
This person covers Xbox, so I can't trust their opinion.
Definitive.
This person is just toxic positivity. That's why they have this opinion. And they just want those really easy things that they can use to ban. I'm dismissing that. I'm dismissing this. I'm dismissing this. Really, what I push constantly and everything I do is being able to have the harder conversations. I never, steer away from the harder conversations because they're important. We got to have some level of nuance when we're talking about video games. And for me, I always think about the people who are making games. At the end of the day, there are people who, I would just say almost every single person who's involved with the games industry is here because they love gaming. And there's so much of this us versus them. Like, now that I'm a journalist or whatever, there's all this like media's bias. Like, there's all of that just blanket that just gets cast out. So any opinion you don't like or any opinion you don't agree with, it's because of that. It's because of this evil stereotype that permeates and ruins the games industry, blah, 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 blah. But really, again, I circle back to the people because I think about my aspirations growing up. When I was, going to school for audio production, wanted to be a sound designer in film, was so excited, so passionate, so ready, spent all this time and energy doing it, got into the space, worked on some projects. And then I was just like chewed up, spit out, burnt out to the point where I just didn't ever want anything to do with that ever again. And I think about my experience with that. And I look at that in the games industry and I see people who are, used and abused and have horrible experiences. And I've seen people on social media share similar experiences where they said, I'm out of game development for XYZ reasons because the culture is terrible. And then you have companies, abusing their employees. And then you have basically people online championing that, saying like, whatever it takes to get the game done, whatever it takes to get a good game out. And that is something I push back really strongly, because at the end of the day, we have to stop and say, what does this mean for the people who are making it? Because, people are making these games, like, no matter what, like, until we get to the dystopian future where AI algorithms are making everything, like, for now, for the time being, people are making games and we have to support them. So when I look at the console war conversations, when I look at people who are mad and want to be mad, they want you to be mad, there are reasons to be upset. There really are. Video games, generally speaking, are not one of them. When we look at the global climate and we look at everything happening in the world around us, video games, and whether they're good or bad, shouldn't be something that is a legit point of rage for you as an individual. And so this fixation with rage and being upset, it's just not who I am. And I have people come at me and say that, oh, I'm a fanboy, or I'm afraid to speak my mind, or whatever rhetoric they want to throw around. But that's just not who I am. Like, I care about people. I don't want people to feel like trash for making video games. And so that's why I'm very careful with how I articulate myself online.
Yeah. Well said, man. I agree. That kind of goes without saying, because I preach about it too much almost. But I think perspective is key, and that's what you're kind of, to not to boil your point down by any stretch, but perspective is key. If you're mad over a video game and that's the thing that's driving your day-to-day anger and upset, there's far more important things to be concerned about in life in general. And there's also, I think, what we need to celebrate more too is the good that games can do. I think that there needs to be more conversation around what gaming does for people, how it helps people, especially in like the accessibility arena and with disabilities and medical professions. Now, I mean, we just keep finding more and more ways that games can be awesome.
Exactly. Yeah,
and
there's a lot of reasons to be excited about
Yeah,
video games right now.
so much more enjoyable to talk about those things, in my opinion. So one of the other reasons why I enjoy chatting with you, man. So
yeah, no, again, like, I'm not somebody who's going to try to discredit someone's feelings. Your feelings are valid. It's okay to have certain feelings about certain things, but ultimately you got to take a step back every now and then and ask yourself, where is this coming from? Is this really from a place of I'm just mad about this, or is there something else underlying that is amplifying your disappointment or anger towards something? Because again, yeah, talking about video games online should almost always be fun. When we're talking about crunch, when we're talking about Bobby Kotick and that whole thing, we can have some hard conversations. We can have some angry conversations about that, because there are people's lives at stake there. But generally speaking, talking about video games online should not be hostile, really, ever. But I don't know. What do I know? I guess.
I'll quote Hogue here. He likes to say that reasonable minds can differ, and of course, what he means by that is, it's okay to have a different opinion. Just talk about it in a mature way, right? Like, and that's, I think, what we miss sometimes. But
exactly.
Yeah, it's not even that difficult, really. But anyway, well, man, it has been an absolute pleasure as always chatting with you, brother. So I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you sharing some things and perspectives. And obviously, like I've said multiple times, I wish you your journey nothing but the best going forward in the industry and what you can do. Obviously, we'll stay in touch. But anything else you want to chat about, or anything you want to shout out before we head out?
I mean, I think that's about it, dude. Again, really appreciate you having me on. Again, you and I talk behind the scenes a lot. Love your perspective on things. Love that, again, we can have some more level-headed, maybe that's harsh, but level-headed conversations about all of this, and that means a lot.
Except for Breath of the Wild, we draw the line there.
Don't get me started. Don't, Brian. Speaking of rage, no. But again, really appreciate it. The only thing I'll say is, if you want to talk to me about games, you can just follow me on Twitter at Miles Dompier, and then you can check out what I'm working on over at windowscentral.com.
There you go, brother. All right, man. Well, we will head out. Thanks as always. Another industry perspectives in the book with Miles Dompier. Appreciate the time. I appreciate your support of Seasoned Gaming. Of course, I'm Push Power Ains is the easiest way to find me on Twitter. And as always, check out Seasoned Gaming. And if you like to support honest gaming journalism, you can find ways to support us and check us out on the site. So appreciate it as always. And with that, we will close this out, get out of here, and we will talk to you next time. Peace.